Hello all, my name's Jack. Welcome to Cine Watch Read, where I'll be reviewing films, TV shows and books on this channel. And right now I'm in a bit of a reading challenge, as I am currently reading Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles. And it's a bit of a challenge for me because, in case you didn't know, there's about 15 books in the series. Right now I currently own 12 because I have gone through various reviews, and turns out there are a couple that are not very well popular among the fan base, and they are ones that can easily be skipped. Apparently Anne Rice kind of disowns them herself in later parts of the books. There's also, from what I understand as well, she has a spin-off trilogy called the Mayflower Witches, or no, Mayfair Witches. Why did I say Mayflower? Yes, apparently you need to read those three to understand at least two of those books that she disowns. So at the moment, my mind thought is stick to 12 of these books for the time being, and because that's a lot of reading anyway for 12 books. And the best part is I have already read 4 of them, so I've got 4 reviews already planned. So I've read the first 4 books, first being Interview with the Vampire, Book 2, The Vampire Lestat, Book 3, The Queen of the Damned, and Book 4, Tale of the Body Thief. I've got a bit of a interesting relationship because this is where I could say this is where my love for vampires started from this. Not so much from the books itself, but from the film adaptation of Interview with the Vampire, starring Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt and Kirsten Dunst. I say I had an interest in vampires at the start, but no, from a young age, but I don't think I ever really fully appreciated it until I saw that film. I remember when Twilight first came out. That's where the vampire craze kind of started over 10 years ago, when vampires were just so cool at that moment. And even though I did not hate Twilight, I found it very underwhelming when it comes to how it portrays vampires. And I just felt like I wanted to watch a real vampire film, and I just happened to discover this movie, and I loved it so much. It was just amazing. So of course I had to read the book afterwards, and that's when I managed to get the original trilogy. Yeah, so Interview with the Vampire Lestat, and The Queen of Damned in a deal. So that's kind of why they got similar covers here. And yeah, I got through the first book pretty well easily, actually, and that's no surprise because I watched the film, so I kind of knew what was happening anyway. And of course although the book does add a lot more to the film naturally, because obviously the film cuts a lot out that has to be for pacing issues. But when it came to reading the Vampire Lestat, I don't think I even then appreciated it that much, because I find it a bit of a chore to get through. I don't know why. I think a lot of it is because something I noticed when in revisiting this now is that they're not very plot driven. I mean, there's plots there, but they're not the focus. They're very character driven stories, so the plot, the thing that drives the story along, takes a back seat, and it's lots and lots of conversations, very in-depth conversations in every book so far. And they're interesting conversations as well. So it's not like there's nothing giving your interest, but sometimes they can drag, and I don't think I appreciated that back then. So when I got to a point that I was kind of giving up, I kind of just shelved the rest of it. And it was until recently. It's actually been sitting on my bookshelf for such a long time. I keep telling myself I'm going to read this soon. Then I was about to, then something else gets in the way. And then about a year ago, I discovered this rankings video. It's from the channel Maven of the Eventide. She has this whole vampire channel. She reviews books and TV shows and films on vampire related, and she she did a ranking of the whole series, and that's where it sparked my interest again. And because she had a lot of interesting things, that's where I discovered that actually some of the books in Anne Rice's series are disposable. Well, that's why I only own 12 instead of 15. If anyone's actually watching this, by the way, and they disagreed with Maven's view on those 3 books that we can disown from the series, please let me know if you think differently and they're worth reading. Because from everything I'm hearing from those books, I did do some more research before I bought the rest of the series, and I just can't find any good reviews on them. But hey, I'm interested in your thoughts on this. But anyway, yeah, so it was Maven in Tide's reviews that sparked my interest again, and I finally read the original trilogy up until last December, and that's when something else happened. Anne Rice had passed away, and very sad, and it was very strange to me. Like, I just because I had just completed the trilogy that I had sat on for nearly 10 years. I was getting ready to read Tale the Body Thief after that, and then the announcement happened that she died, and I couldn't believe it. It was kind of surreal to me that I happened to finish the trilogy just before she died. I know it's just coincidences. I don't believe in that kind of stuff, but I find it very strange that that it all aligned that way. That I happen to have this new interest in her series, and I finally completed something that I was sitting on for such a long time just before she died. And I will continue to read the rest of the series. It took me a long time to go back to Tale of the Body Thief because I was so struck by that announcement of her passing. In fact, I bought the rest of the series just before she died, which is another strange thing. So yeah, that's an odd start, but then I guess in a way death is a big theme of Interview with the Vampire, because both the book and the film, it's told from Louis' perspective. Louis, how do you even say his name? Louis de Pointe-de-Lac. Very, very French, isn't it? Anyway, I'll just call him Louis. I won't use his full name. And so yeah, both the film and the book is told from his perspective, and it's a very dark story. He's constantly in depression. Like I say, the whole book in a way and the film is like a metaphor for depression and grievance. So the framing device for both the book and the film is that he is speaking to a journalist called Daniel, and he's just telling his backstory to Daniel, and then it's almost meta in a way, this book, because it's like the book that Daniel wrote. It's weird, even though of course obviously this is Anne Rice's book, but in Vampire Chronicles universe, Daniel wrote the book from Louis' perspective, and that's kind of like a running theme in the whole book series, that each book is referenced in the next one. So Vampire Stat references a book called Interview with the Vampire, and it was written, even though it's Louis' story, it was of course written by Daniel, and then of course Queen of Damned then of course references both these books as if they're written not by Anne Rice but by the vampires or the journalists. And even that even continues into Tale of the Body Thief as well. It's very, very meta that way. And so yeah, there's not a big story going on. It's just Louis telling us his life, and very tragic life. In both the book and the film, Louis is bereaved. It's a difference on how he is. I mean, in the book he's grieving for his brother, and in the film I believe it's his wife and daughter. And he's pretty much on self-destruct, and then he meets the vampire Lestat, and Lestat turns him into a vampire, and it's like they have a very love-hate relationship. Like he hates Lestat but he can't stay away from Lestat either. He cannot break free of it. It's like, it's very much an abusive relationship. That's another thing, another theme in this as well, is that it is about abuse as well. It gets even worse when he meets this little girl called Claudia, who's dying of, she just lost her mother to the plague, and of course she's about to die herself, presumably, of this plague as well, until Louis mistakenly bites her, and Lestat decides to turn her into a vampire so he can have a daughter. And again, another tragic character, because Claudia, in the film, she's played by Kirsten Dunst, and she was about 10 when she played her, and an amazing performance for a 10-year-old. But in the book, she's described as being 5 or 6. Okay, now naturally in the film you can't do that. It's such a dark and complex role that you cannot expect a 5-year-old to play. So I think getting a 10-year-old is even a challenge to play that. And so again, this is one of the reasons why I say the book is better, because you can definitely get away with a lot of things more creatively. So like I said, imagine just like a toddler as a vampire, and not only that, because there's a lot of time going on, because vampires are ageless, and as years go by, Claudia matures mentally. She has, mentally she does become a grown woman, but physically she's always stuck in a toddler's body, and it is, and it must be incredibly frustrating for her. And they do establish that she's just desperate to be a woman, and she can't, and she can never escape, her companionship with either Louis or Lestat, because even though she's mentally strong, she cannot, she knows she cannot function the way she is as a child. She cannot, she can't get a job, she can't, rent a house by herself or something. She is always dependent on a grown-up. And it is, despite the fact that she is a strong vampire, she is, it's like she's killing left and right like adults without any problem at all, and it makes it even harder for her, because she can be a very independent character, but yet because of her physical state, she is constantly dependent on Louis and Lestat. And then it gets even worse when she discovers why she's become the way she is, because Louis almost killed her, and then Lestat turned her, but she recognizes that Louis is in a horrible position, that he is abused by Lestat, and so she decides to take action and break Louis away from Lestat. And I probably would save that for a spoiler section, because the whole second half is like almost goes in a completely different direction. So I'll get to the spoilers in a second. Like I said, I loved the film adaptation. Like it is mostly faithful. I mean, yeah, they did make some odd changes. Like I said, they changed Louis' backstory a little bit, but it doesn't change. I don't think they changed the character as drastically. Like Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise, they do such fantastic jobs bringing those characters to life. Like I can even just sort of picture them in my head when I'm reading the follow-ups, because they just capture the personality so well. I don't really picture Kirsten Dunst that much when I'm reading the book, just because of the age difference, but it doesn't take away from her performance at all. She is just amazing as for a child actor playing such a complex role. And of course there is a remake series coming out. I know for years Anne Rice had been trying to get a Vampire Chronicles series out there, with her son Christopher Rice is writing it, and apparently there was a pilot written, but they were going to start it off with the Vampire Lestat, which I guess sort of makes sense media wise, because technically speaking, the second book, Vampire Lestat, is a prequel to Interview with the Vampire, because it's Lestat's backstory before the events of Interview with the Vampire, but although the framing device of it does take place after the modern framing device of Interview with the Vampire. Regardless, that's been scrapped, and now we've got this other series coming out, which is going to start with Interview with the Vampire again, and they've cast, is it Jacob Anderson from Game of Thrones to play Louis, which, good choice, I'd say. I don't know who the actor is who's playing Lestat. I've seen a picture of him. He does look the part, so I'm sure he'll be good. I'm very concerned though with the choice of Claudia, because they cast a teenage girl to play Claudia, and I feel like that really misses the point of the character. The whole point is that she is a grown woman in a child's body, and she's ageless, physically, and I guess being in a teenage body forever is probably frustrating as well. The vampires in Twilight don't seem to be bothered by that. I'm not sure, so they don't think they're going to capture the same thing with Claudia by casting a teenager. I feel like they really missed the mark there. And other bits is concerning me. Like apparently it's not taking place in the same time period as Interview with the Vampires, so we're not going to see like the same kind of costuming as it again. So it's definitely like more of an alternate universe of the Vampire Chronicles than a straight up adaptation. So yeah, I'm kind of not looking forward to that. I'll give it a chance if it's airing in my country. I'll give it a go, getting my hopes up for it, especially because this is obviously not what Anne Rice and her son Christopher was telling us they were intending to produce. So I don't know what happened. I guess studios just did not like what they were proposing. Maybe Anne and Christopher sold out and just let them do their own thing again. It must have been difficult because when you read these books, you can definitely tell these are a book's book. These are, they're very much written for the book medium. She obviously didn't write them with a film adaptation in mind, which you shouldn't do anyway. But but my point is, when you wonder, is a book adaptable? I'm sure they are, but like I said, they're not very story based. They're very character based, and whether audience will gravitate towards that is hard to tell. And so I can definitely understand why some people find that hard to believe. And maybe that's why Anne Rice, because she was so dedicated to her book series, and and she was so particular, that I guess what she was planning for the series didn't stray that much from the books, and I guess studios felt that wasn't marketable, or they wouldn't get the ratings with that. So I guess that's why they decided to go for this alternate universe type thing that they're teasing us. I guess about time to go spoiler section. If you are interested in vampires, especially if you actually want to see a vampire story from a vampire's perspective, definitely read this book and watch this film as well, actually, because like I said, it is a very faithful adaptation. Watch this film because it does capture what I love about this book, and so it is still the best vampire film made. I don't care what anyone says, it is the best vampire film. Very well made. It's made by Neil Jordan, who also did The Crying Game, and it's also it's very well acted. It's got a great atmosphere. Going into spoilers now, Louis and herself out of this situation, Claudia kills Lestat, and I'm going to use quote kills because we know he's not dead, because otherwise this wouldn't exist. But yes, she attempts to kill Lestat, and she does it so brutally as well, and you think he's not going to survive that, but he does survive. And when he comes back, when they realize he hadn't died, and he looks all like zombie-like with all his flesh rotting on his face or burnt, and it is like, what is going on? How is he surviving this? And if you're actually wondering how he survives, it is actually explained in the sequel, Vampire Lestat. So if you're like me wondering how did he survive that, well, read that book and you'll find out. But either way, they manage to break free from Lestat and they go to France, and that's where they discover the Vampire Theatre run by Armand, and they have this whole play where they are actors and they are playing vampires. As they point out, it's very avant-garde because they're vampires pretending to be humans, pretending to be vampires, and they looks like they kill a woman on stage. It looks like it's staged, or at least to the audience it looks staged, but it seems like the reality is they actually are killing her on stage. It is really weird. And while they're there, they do discover that there are laws within the vampire community itself, and that is one of them is don't kill your own kind. And of course, that's when Claudia starts to realize she may be doomed because obviously she kills Lestat. And I mean, Claudia does try to control her fate. She knows that Louis is eventually going to abandon her to Armand, and of course she wants to get herself a new companion quickly and then run away. And then it's too late. They even though she does get that new companion, the vampires come after her and they kill her and her new companion. They put her in this room. They lock her in this room with the sunlight coming down. It is in the book it's done off screen because it's all done from Louis' perspective, so we only see the aftermath of it in the book, whereas in the film we actually do see that, and we don't see the full effect of it, but we do see the sun shining on her, and you see her arm about to smoke up, and it is so sad. Even though Claudia is such a crazy character, and she's maybe psychopathic in a way, because obviously she's a vampire, she loves drinking blood, but it is still a sad moment, like especially when Louis discovers the ashes, and then they because she's burnt to death, but anyway, it's almost like a statue as well. It's like her ashes are all burnt together like a statue, and then when he touches her, the ashes suddenly break apart and into his face. It is so sad. And then you got this awful character afterwards who I think his name's Santiago. He's played by Stephen Ray, and the way he just looks at Louis with that awful smile, and you just, that is a face you just want to kill, like, you evil character. And then of course he does get his revenge afterwards as well, and that went by too fast. I wanted to see more of that, but overall it is satisfying, but ultimately it does bring back the whole theme of depression and grievance, and it's like Louis' depression and grievance does go round in circles, which in a way is in a way true to life, how a lot of people go through that. And in the end of the book, he pretty much says that's it. There is no resolution, there is no hope or something for him. The book does end on a pretty depressing note on that, where he kind of almost leaves the journalist hanging. But in a way that is true to life. So we don't know what's going to happen afterwards, especially in our own life, in our thing, because in a way it is almost working in a cycle. Cool. The film tries to make that more upbeat because they reintroduce Lestat after Louis abandons the journalist. So they try and make it upbeat, try and set up, the framing device for Vampire Lestat. So so the film tries to make it a bit more upbeat, whereas the book ends on so much of a downer. So yeah, be warned. I guess this is a proper horror novel in that way, because it is in a way kind of depressing, but a very interesting, depressing book. But let's say if you feel like it leaves you on a sour note, then I suggest go immediately into Vampire Lestat, and that's a review for another day. But I do suggest, if you felt underwhelmed by that, go into Vampire Lestat, and you can see that that's not the tone of the rest of the series. The next 4 books, the 3 I have here, and then the next one after that, is told from Lestat's perspective, and he has a much more, even though he is also going through a lot of stuff as well in the books, it's not as much of a downer as Louis' story. There are a lot of down moments in the next series as well, but Lestat is a much more upbeat character than Lestat is. But Lestat is a much more upbeat character than Louis is. So that's pretty much all I got to say on it. I will be reviewing these next 3 very soon, because like I said, I've already read them. I don't know when I haven't started the 5th book yet, which is called Memnoch the Devil. Hopefully I'll get to that soon, so hopefully by the time I finish reviewing Tale of the Body Thief, I'll be almost ready to start reviewing Memnoch the Devil afterwards. Okay, so keep reading, keep watching, and I'll see you next time.